Good evening. My name is Odie Hawkins, and I'd like to welcome my partner in this enterprise, Zola Salena-Hawkins, who's just come in from out of the cold.
Yes, yes.
I'm sure such an attractive little outfit would keep you warm.
Oh, yeah.
I made you some hot tea.
Good, Tambala.
Oh, that's great.
Tambala.
Can you pull it out? Oh, yes.
Tambala.
I think that starts us off in a good way. Well, as you, cheers to you.
Yes, you.
Have a libation.
Oh, a snack while you're watching our video.
This won't go on for very long because we have a number of other things to do. But we started off last Monday with part one, and we didn't finish it because of circumstances. So we decided to continue into part two before we posted did the posting. One of the things that came up last week that I'd like to continue at this point had to do with the Box Writers Workshop.
Right.
I'll do a very brief, quick review of the question you asked me about, like, how did you become involved in, how did you become a professional writer, and so forth and so on. I answered the question usually at about 15 at Deuce High School in Chicago. It was the custom for young men who wanted to try to cozy up to some young woman to get her a note or write a letter, so forth and so on. I was hanging around with a number of brothers who couldn't write a letter. One of them, a friend named Eddie, I never will forget it, was attracted to this young lady, and he said, "Yeah, I'd like to meet her, but I can't write a letter." I said, "Okay, I'll do it for you." So I wrote him the letter. The next thing I knew, they were doing the little moon dance down the middle of the hallway.
It was a Shakespearean moment.
It was a moment.
Yes.
To be or not to be.
Yes, you were down on the ground giving the lines for the person.
Exactly. I think it was Cyrano who did that also.
Yes, Cyrano.
Okay. Somebody else came to me, and anyway, I started a little business. I was a sophomore. And for 3 years, I wrote what I would call love letters for friends. I got to the point, they asked me, how much would you charge? So I had no choice but to give them a price. I charged $1 for an ordinary, $2 for an extraordinary, $3 for an exotique, and $4 for an outrageous. I can't even begin to tell you what an outrageous would sound like. Okay, I'm doing that. I'm going to fast forward really quickly. Dr. Margaret Burroughs, who has been instrumental in my life in so many ways, suggested, go to this workshop or I'll fail you. She sent me to a workshop that was being led by a woman named Margaret Peterson, and that was the beginning of a form of writing life. Prior to that, I've been doing what I think most people do who want to write. They just scribble. But she put a little bit of a structure to it, you know. Don't just simply throw some stuff at us. Make it come from a specific, well-designed place. It was introduction to beginning, middle, end, crisis, climax, resolution. Professional. Up to that point with the school thing, I've just been writing emotionally.
Yes.
I love you. I love to see you. I want you to see me.
Hormone based.
Yes. Yes. I guess you could put it that way with your red hat on.
Okay.
Hormone based. I got to remember that one. Okay, we go on from Miss Peterson's workshop until years later, fast forwarding once again.
So in the meantime, life got in the way and you didn't have a chance to write every day.
I didn't want to write every day. No. As a matter of fact, I was still looking at it as something that I like to do, but you know, I didn't walk around with a pen in my hand waiting to write.
Behind your ear.
Behind your ear. None of that. It was just simply something that was opportune, and I was an opportunist. So.
And then you developed a passion for writing.
Then I developed a passion. I don't know why it happened And I can't really lie and say it was because I wanted to write down the history of the African American world or anything like that. It was just simply something that was blessed upon me. As a friend used to say. Years later, understand, I'm not making a living from writing. I'm just simply writing. I'm the guy that people came to have some document interpreted because I was known to be a reader.
Right.
And so I could say what, wherefore, what to for, and what this meant.
Right. And there were, I think, recall a case where a woman's child was arrested and she needed a reference letter and you wrote that for her.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I was doing that. People who were being almost assaulted by the legal system was asking, you know, the guy come to me and says, I need to write a letter to my probation officer. I wrote a letter.
Also, you wrote a contract, was it a proposal for the Black Doll?
It was called Shindana.
Okay,
And
right.
my friend Kisasi asked me to do it, and I did it. This is years later. I was living in California. I had come to California. I came to California for the first time as a draftee, and they sent me up to Fort Ord, and I loved being in California. I hated being in the Army. I hated being in the Army, but I love California.
I can imagine most artists.
It was just something to go and get the grain. Get up at 5:30 in the morning for what? To march? Come on, give me a break. Why couldn't we march at 8?
Well, I guess it was similar to when you were in Africa and you wanted people up to do capoeira in the early morning.
I was asking my group that she's referring to, I was asking them, let's gather for the capoeira practice at high noon. Then after a couple of sessions under the equatorial sun, one of the young men, Asiji, came to me. Hello, Asiji. Mr. Odie, we want to do the capoeira, no doubt about it. But do we have to do it when the sun is high in the sky like that? Couldn't we do it in the evening when it's cool?
Yes.
And I never thought about it. Well, okay.
Well, maybe the Army never thought about marching in the evening.
I wouldn't
I didn't say that.
I wouldn't give you I wouldn't bet on that. But you might be right.
Okay.
You might be right. In any case, as you see, going forward in a jocular way, I was sitting at home in Chicago, 1955, when the Watts Rebellion broke out, that a lot of mainstream publications have always referred to as the riot. It wasn't riot, it was a rebellion. I found out the reasons for it because some of the same things were happening in Chicago when I was growing up. Police oppression, discrimination, racism.
No jobs. No jobs.
And, you know, the conglomeration of things just created a firestorm. I saw it on television. I thought, you know, if these black people are angry enough to want to burn up their own neighborhoods, I didn't know anything about 103rd or Watts or anything, but if they want to burn down, they must be really angry enough to show the power, the white power structure, what they're feeling. I was attracted to that. So as early as the first chance I got, I made it to Watts. To the Watts I lived. My first apartment was on 104th in Avalon. I was still working at the post office, which meant that I had a job because my job transferred me, allowed me to transfer. I always say I jumped off the plane and ran straight to the Watts Writers Workshop. The Watts Writers Workshop had been established by Bud Schulberg as a way to counteract the mess that was happening. He thought that if he gave people a chance to become involved in the art, they would be less likely to want to burn the place down. So
give them a voice.
Give them a voice. Give us a voice. The Watts Writers Workshop with some marvelous people. Louis Merriweather, John W. Block, Harlan Ellison, James Levine, about 10 or 15 people on a regular basis came and gave us their talents. Here's how you write John Block, who's a screenplay writer. Here's how you write a screenplay. This is how you write a short story. What goes into the making of a novel, and on and on and on. Free. Some people came to the Watts Writers Workshop and they managed to gain understanding of some things. Some people just came and hung out.
So you're more like apprentices, like, you know.
We were all apprentices, you're right. Some of us continued. I think some people were just simply looking for attention, but they came. I think the rate of attrition was quite high. Out of maybe 10 people, you might have 3 who continue doing something in a literary field or in the media field.
Well, and to be fair, that often in underdeveloped or in communities where there are not many resources, life circumstances sometimes pull you away from what you love to do.
Yeah.
You know, babies that were unexpected.
Oh yeah, no. You're right on the money, because I saw that. I saw that happening on a regular basis. I think about a young woman. We once upon a time did a poetry tour under the auspices of the Watts Writers Workshop. Thomas Spratt was the director at the time, and he asked, Odie, would you like to take a trip to East, to New York, and give poetry readings? I wasn't a poet, but I could write poetry. So I said, yes, okay. Young woman who went with us was married to an angry young black man who had been tortured by the police, just to put things in perspective, who was carrying on the bad habit that he had been whipped with. So he was beating his girlfriend, this poet. And, we had to ask, what's wrong with your eye? Why is your eye black? She wrote a poem called How My Karate Instructor Knocked Me Down, or knocked me up, because that happened too. As you say, she was a victim. It had all kinds of elements in it. We had people who started things and didn't stop. We had people who started things and never started. Never really started. They said they started. There were people who were hanging around. The most devastating blow to the Watts Writers Workshop was the LAPD intel, the spy unit, the Crush This Cultural Movement unit. These were the people we found out later who had taken on. I'm proud to say my name was one of the ones that they took, and tried to show that we were making an effort to do something that was anti-American. Don't worry about it. There's an eagle flying over the house.
It might be the VA, so I think.
It might be the VA.
Yeah, so let me check.
So we'll have to stop this at this point.
No, you can go ahead.
And continue it in a few minutes.
Go ahead.
I guess you could call it a commercial. Or maybe it isn't a commercial. In any case, as a member of the Watts Writers Workshop, I had a chance to meet brothers and sisters who were involved in what I felt I was involved with. We had poetry readings. We had not so many prose readings, because it seemed that everybody was a poet, but not very many people were novelists. I happened to fall into the novel range. Like I said, I wrote poetry too, but my heart was really in prose. So, having done a few years of scribbling under the mentorship of John W. Block, a couple of years to be exact, he had me rewrite a short story for about 2 years. Seriously. I would come to him with this short story, and he said, okay, you got a family with 2 kids. The kids are 7 and 8, and you say that they have a couple of dogs.
That was
excuse me, the commercial is over.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, look out,
I did
you're
something.
knocking me around.
I'm sure knocking you around. Sorry there.
And you were saying?
And I was saying that was a request for you to help write a biography of somebody. So we'll talk about it afterwards. Okay.
You see how it goes.
Okay.
Okay, so, but if you're writing,
Mhm.
you'll have to expect interruptions
Mhm.
like that and many other kinds of things. As Zola was saying just before she left, people who wanted to write and watch writer's workshop were very, in many cases, denied the opportunity because they were being pulled by other circumstances. Like you say, the guy who's looking for a job is not sitting down there with his notebook talking about, I'm looking for a job. He's out looking for a job. The girl I talked about who had her abusive boyfriend, it went on and on and on. The man I'm talking about, John W. Block, who had me rewrite this short story for about 2 years. After about 2 years, he says, come, Odie, I want you to meet my agent. Agent? What does an agent do? Well, you'll see. So he turned me on to his agent, and for a period of time, a number of years, say 6 or 7, I was writing screenplays and an occasional television script.
And you got an NAACP award for
something
Old
called
Sister. Old Sister.
Old Sisters, yes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The Old Sisters was a very fine television series that never had a chance because it was so good. It was created by Norman Lear and Alex Haley. And the story basically comes from Alex Haley, who talks about what it was like to have a woman in his community in Henning, Tennessee, who was so upright morally, so ethically correct that every 10 years or maybe every 15 years or so, they would pick someone like her and create an award. They didn't get a statue or anything, but she was known thereafter as Old Sister. And women were vying for that honor because it meant that you were accepted and venerated by your community. That's what the show was that I wrote, that I got the NAACP award for. The show was so fine, so good, that it flopped because people didn't want to see that kind of art. They didn't want to see that kind of creation. They wanted to see blood and guts.
Well, blood and guts, and everything is beautiful. You know, everybody, all the hair is done nicely, all the skin tones are perfect, all the nails are done, as opposed to real life situations or the past. You know, Stephen Feshett, Beulah, all those stories, Amos and Andy. They didn't want to see any of that. Okay, they wanted, and I'm going to say mainly it was the bourgeois black community that said they did not want to be represented in that way any longer.
Yes. And the interesting thing is that the very people you're talking about, some of them, I can remember going to their homes and they had to turn the TV off real quick in order for you to see that they weren't watching Amos and Andy. So it's been a crippled kind of trip. So
moving on up to when your agent dies, does the author stop writing?
No, that's really a point. First of all, in many ways, the agent can be an incentive because he is going to make money if he can take your work and sell it and make his 15%.
But I also love the fact that the agent contacted you and wanted you to do something for Michael Jackson, but you didn't particularly care for Michael Jackson at the time, so you refused, and the agent's 15% went bye-bye. Yeah.
Well, when I make him lose money, then he's not going to feel very kindly toward me.
Right.
To his credit, I'm not going to mention his name because he's gone. But to his credit, he didn't hold it against me. He just thought I was being a little bit selfish and
artistic,
artsy. You know.
Right. Yes.
The fact of the matter is that I knew who Michael Jackson was. I just didn't have an affinity for him. I was more interested in Thelonious Monk or Charlie Parker or Bud Powell, and I thought these people should be given more respect and admiration and remuneration Michael Jackson is a very talented young man, deserves everything he got.
Mhm.
And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. But for me to write for him, I wasn't really quite sure what was I supposed to write for him. He had a songwriter.
You were not the one.
I was not the one.
So, you know, sometimes as an artist, you know, if you really care for your craft, like that's one of the things I like about Harry Belafonte, that he cared for his craft and he chose what he wanted to be in and what he didn't.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
For example, this past Saturday, we were invited to Bilbroom Library here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Pat Forte, Ron Dow, Charles Chapman, Zola, Salena-Hawkins, and myself. We were invited to constitute a panel.
And one member who wasn't able to attend is Rhonda White.
Rhonda White.
And she's coming.
Okay, and also people who had been in the writers' workshop at Bilbroom prior to that, Noveline Smith,
and Karen
and
Johnson,
other
in the
people.
audience, yeah.
Mr. Thompson, that's with a T.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about what it was like to be hopefully in a latter day, a rebirth of the Watts Writers Workshop that would be called the Bilbroom Library. So far, we've been at it.
The Bilbroom Writers Workshop.
The Bilbroom Writers Workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully we'll have the same kind of attraction eventually that the Watts Writers Workshop had. We don't have to build buildings down. We don't have to tear the landscape up to know that things ain't what they should be, and they probably will never be, but we can keep on trying to make them what they should be.
This is true.
Having said all that.
And this being the year of the snake, it's the year of rebirth, okay? You shut off the old and put on the new.